Okay, good evening, everybody. Welcome to another hashtag What's Next production for Open Dialogus. And as usual, we have the topic du jour, hopefully a very topical one. And today it's going to be COVID-19, what's next? And of course, that conjures up so many things. And to talk about these things, I'm really pleased to have three very interesting guests to share their thoughts with us all. To start off with, can I introduce Andrew Bridgen, MP, the MP for North West Leicestershire. You're very welcome to the stream, Andrew. Andrew, of course, is one of the, I think, Andrew, you're one of the 28 Brexit Spartans, aren't you? You're a Spartan. So it's always good to have a Spartan on the stream. So nice to see you.
Never enough Spartans to go around, unfortunately.
Okay. Also, we've got James Delingpole, who's a very learned man, president-elect, no less, also a professor, also a columnist for Breitbart, all-round, I think a Brexit heretic, or sorry, not a Brexit, a COVID heretic would be reasonable description, James. I've obviously followed you on Twitter and elsewhere, so it'll be interesting to hear your thoughts. And then last, but by no means least, former UKIP MEP, Godfrey Bloom. Godfrey's been on the stream before, and I think Godfrey's a plain-speaking man, and that's what we need. We need lots more plain speaking. So to start off with, let me start off, Andrew, with you. If I can kick off with you, Andrew, you were very prominent in pushing for the UK to get a freedom pass from the European Union. As I said, hence the Spartan reference. How do you feel about the British people having to potentially ask for a freedom pass from the British government?
It's deeply regrettable. It's nothing any Conservative would ever want to do, and those freedoms have not been taken away lightly. What I've always pushed with the government is that despite what the naysayers might say that we live in a police state, we don't live in a police state because we do not have the number of police to live in a police state. We don't have that number of enforcement officers. The only way of getting the people to agree to whatever restrictions of freedoms the government wishes to impose is to carry the people with them, which is why I've always been very clear that we must not have rule by diktat. We must have debate in the House of Commons of all measures affecting people's civic freedoms and rights. And if the government can't persuade the members of the House of Commons of the legitimacy of their claims to take away these freedoms, then there's no way they're going to be able to carry the public with them. And ultimately, in every constituency, the MP is someone who is an opinion former, and we've got to convince our electorate of the need for these very severe restrictions, far more severe than we've ever inflicted, even during the Second World War on the population. Even Hitler couldn't shut the pubs, could he? Or the fish and chip shop very often. So that's where I come from on this. A long time ago, I did a degree in biological sciences, and I did write about viruses and viroids. I wouldn't necessarily claim to be a scientist so many years after my degree, but I have more than a passing interest in the topic and some understanding of the fundamentals.
Well, we'll dig into a lot of that, Andrew, but James, if I can turn to you then, what's your thoughts on the freedom pass that's been discussed openly in the last number of days by some within government?
I think the very notion of a freedom pass legitimizes and reifies, if you like, what is in fact the biggest, most dishonest scam in medical or political history. I think that there is no evidence that coronavirus is any worse than any number of bad seasonal flus which have periodically afflicted Britain and other countries. For example, in 2017, and 2018, there were as many excess deaths from flu as there have been this year from coronavirus. This has been an engineered and manufactured crisis. It has got nothing to do with health anymore. This is purely about politics, globalist politics at that. It's the agenda of the United Nations Agenda 2030 and of the Davos World Economic Forum's Great Reset. And we should not be dignifying this outrageous assault on our economy and on our people's freedoms by dignifying it with a kind of pass which shows whether or not you're immune. Most of us have already got immunity to a degree, T-cell immunity. And it's extraordinary that this basic medical fact, which no serious virologist or epidemiologist or immunologist would have disputed until this year. It's amazing that we are now in the position of denying basic facts, scientific facts like T-cell immunity, as in order to advance a political agenda being created by some really very dodgy people. So, I mean, Andrew's talking a good game now, but I think he really ought to be fighting a lot harder. I think all our parliamentarians ought to be fighting a lot harder against this illiberalism.
Well, actually, just following, James, just to follow on from that, I mean, what you've said and also what Andrew said, Godfrey, the thing is, if listening to what Andrew said and what James has said, why do you think a government in particular would seek to impose so much damage on the economy, to restrict people's freedoms in such a way, to suggest a freedom pass? Why would a government do that? Because surely that is, at the very basic level, going to be something that's going to myth an awful lot of its electorate, kind of what Andrew said. These are very severe restrictions. So why would a government seek to basically score own goals? I mean, what's your thinking on that? Why would it do it?
Well, can I just sort of semi-reintroduce myself as an ex-UKIP MEP, which is a totally and utterly futile, frankly, way of introducing me for this particular subject. Can I just tell everybody that I was head of economic research for an actuarial practice for many years, and I finished my career in the city as a chief executive of a life insurance company. So I am professionally qualified to assess the input of scientific opinion. And that is what I have been doing on and off in various ways up until 2004 with some success. Now, the point of this is, and I speak with my professional hat on, albeit I'm retired now, the principles are all the same, because I lived through the dairy product scare, I lived through the AIDS scare, I lived through all these situations. Yeah. And the only way you can deal with it from a mortality statistical perspective or an actuarial statistical perspective is that you have to look at the numbers. An opinion is valueless. Emotion is valueless. You have to look at the numbers. And we know because they're in the public domain, if you want to dig deeply enough, you will find from the National Health that 1,700 people who are hitherto fit and healthy have died from this coronavirus. We also know that the statistics have been skewed when it comes to things like death certificates, numbers, the difference between dying of COVID, dying with COVID. So the long and short of it is, this is not a dangerous virus, even by historical standards. And not one of you here tonight, I would guess, knows anybody who is fit and healthy under 70 who has died of this COVID-19. Not one of you. If you do, it would be a 250,000 to 1 shot. All right. So yes, this is a scam. It's a hoax, and it's been a hoax from the beginning. Now, there's only two things. We're either dealing with massive incompetence, and after 10 years in politics, that would not surprise me at all, or we're dealing with some other agenda. We are dealing with the reset or the new world order, which everybody's talking about across the globe. And it's a wonderful way of actually putting the levers in power when we're talking about freedom passes, which is obscene for an Englishman, obscene and unnecessary. we are now talking about the global reset. We are talking about a world change, that an Englishman, a free-born Englishman, needs permission to have his family with him at Christmas. It's disgusting. And I'm just amazed that the whole country's putting up with it.
Well, thanks, Godfrey. And, I think, Andrew, you've heard James and you've heard Godfrey, and I think their kind of views reasonably align with each other. My kind of thinking question for you is, though, that, and it's the one I put to Godfrey, frankly, all that being said, why does this Conservative government, why does it go along with these things? Why does you, as a Conservative politician with a constituency, which you said, lots of people in that in your constituency, I'm sure, have been through the horrors, economically and the rest of it. So why would you go through that if you agreed with what James and Godfrey say? You wouldn't, would you?
No, of course I wouldn't. But I mean, I'm not convinced that we're all being fooled by this global conspiracy to take away everyone's freedoms by these world elites. I can't see on an economic basis. The world elites have got all the money. They run the businesses. They're the power people. What's in the interest of them slowing down the economy and reducing their wealth effectively and their power? I mean, I do agree, but it's the freedom pass idea. Common law is that an Englishman or a Welshman or a Scotsman or an Irishman, Northern Irishman, can do what they do really what they want, unless the government says they can't. So, which is the opposite way around to the Napoleonic system, where they tell their people what they can do. We normally legislate in this country, and you can do anything as long as there isn't a law saying you can't do it.
But that's not the case, Andrew, because if you want to open your pub or your restaurant, you want to go and visit Granny in a nursing home, the government's told us we can't do those things. Is that not a fundamental?
We're told you can't do them. That's common law. You can't do them. So these are short-term measures. The main lockdown is going to be over in another week. I'll tell you what I do think.
Yeah.
There's no more libertarian prime minister that we've had than Boris Johnson, which is, he got a lot of stick early on in this pandemic because he didn't bring in the lockdown early enough. Boris Johnson does not want to bring a lockdown. I think you'll find that history will show that Cummings and Kane left because they wanted a 3 to 6 month lockdown until the vaccine was fully out there. That's the real reason that Cummings left Number 10 the other week.
Okay, James, I'll bring you in now because I see you were agitated.
David, the internet, I don't know what, my reception is so bad, I could only hear half of the drivel Andrew was spouting there, and I'd like to get a proper handle on what absolute tosh he was spouting. So I'm going to just turn my internet off and try and go, I'll be back in a moment, okay? Try and get a different...
all right, so sorry. As James tries to get his... I think you've broken, Andrew, you've broken James'
internet.
You've broken the internet, and we've only just started. Godfrey, perhaps when James tries to fix things at his end, would you like to kind of revert to your reaction?
There's no way that Boris Johnson ever wanted to be the prime minister that shut the pubs and the clubs and all the fun things that people like doing. And indeed, the prime minister himself likes doing a lot. I can assure you.
Well, Andrew, that's how history's going to put him down. Andrew, that is what history's going to say. He's the guy when we didn't even close our pubs in the war. Whether he wants to or doesn't want to, whether he likes it or not, he's going down in history as the man that closed the pubs for the first time in history. Now, let me just come back to the, and I'm not giving you a swivel-eyed conspiracy theory here, not for 1 minute, Andrew or David or anybody. What I'm saying is, it's interesting, isn't it, how well the big organizations do out of this lockdown system. Look how well Amazon's done. Look how well the big supermarkets have done. All the little guys, and the little guys are 80% of our economy, all the little guys, the one-man bands, the chippies, the sparkies, the self-employed, all those people are struggling. Nobody in the public sector. This lockdown, I can tell you, Andrew, will not end until people in the public sector don't have their salaries turning up utterly regardless at the end of the month. I would halve everybody's salary in the public sector, including yours, Andrew, so that you were in the same boat as the rest of us. And so you would have skin in the game. At the moment, the public sector have no skin in the game. Amazon's doing absolutely brilliantly with this because everybody's shopping online. Everybody's queuing at the supermarkets. They've closed so many that the smaller the chains are doing all right. The chains can take the pain. But nobody else can. So the question is from a perhaps, and I'm not suggesting this is the case, Andrew or David. What I'm suggesting is that's how it's manifesting itself at the moment. The little guy's getting crushed and the big guys are riding it out. As we all
would you say that Ryanair was one of the little guys because they're getting crushed? Manchester Airport Group in my constituency, they're getting crushed.
Yes,
EasyJet's getting crushed.
Ryanair is a small player by international standards when you're dealing with a whole world full of international airlines, many of whom are still sponsored by government. So yes, this is the little guys, the middle-sized businesses. Yes, they're being. I'm not making this. I don't want to be painted into a corner to say that this is what I'm suggesting is happening. What my question was, and my question on my videos that I do. It must be one of only two things, all right? It must be two things. It must be gross incompetence, or there's another game in town which we don't know about. And who's pulling the strings? There is no medical reason. There were 160,000 people died of cancer last year, yet we're spending billions of pounds on track and trace. This is the economics of the madhouse. And everybody in Yorkshire up here where I am, when you go out and you go walking, you walk the dogs and you go into town, are saying what the hell's going on? Is the government being run by the Marx brothers?
Okay, so just if I can come in on that one, there's somebody in the street. I flashed this one up on the screen, Andrew, but it's kind of relevant, I think. This lady Alison, who's someone known to me, she says she's opening a cafe next week in the Cotswolds. And I know she's had some months to get to that point, and she finds the restrictions appalling. And I'm sure, many people will be in Alison's position, Andrew. They're maybe.
I find them appalling. I didn't come into politics for any of this, but these are unprecedented times. I mean, it would appear that.
No, they're not.
James and Godfrey think that the scientific advisors advising the government are completely off the scale wrong. Yes. And there isn't going to be a problem with the NHS, and we're not going to have a lot of excess deaths, and we're not going to have intensive care full up, and we're not going to have the meltdown of the NHS that we've seen in some of the healthcare systems in Europe.
Yes, and I will justify that when it's my turn next, David. When it's my turn next, I will justify that, Andrew, in some detail.
Okay.
I mean, those are value. Those are opinions that you're entitled to have, and you can defend them. I mean. For someone who's
I don't do opinions, Andrew. I do facts.
They are huge calls to make, aren't they? When the scientific advisor is saying NHS will
scientific advice. No, wrong. I'll come back to you when it's my turn. You're listening to the wrong people, Andrew.
Hang on, guys. Don't talk across each other because it doesn't come across well. James Delingpole, you're back on the stream. We can see you there. Is your internet better? And would you like to respond?
Yeah, well, I hope so. Listen, I'm very fond of Andrew Bridgen, and I have until this year been a great admirer of his spirited defense of conservative values. I think he's remained a proper conservative in a party which certainly in Parliament has been largely dominated by squishes who don't even understand what conservatism is. People like Johnny Mercer. One could list the names forever. I'm very sorry that Andrew has fled the field on what is undoubtedly the most important issue that any Conservative MP in Parliament has faced in his career. What we're experiencing now is a form of, you could call it fascistic, you could call it a sort of Marxist, you can call it technocratic, whatever you want to call it. It's a form of collectivist, totalitarian takeover. we've already mentioned, and I'm sure that Godfrey will elaborate on this, that there is nothing unusual about coronavirus in terms of its death toll, its danger to Britain. It has been completely exaggerated, and I have to say, it's a bit like big boys made me do it. Bad boys made me do it. Andrew's excuse about, you don't trust the SAGE committee. Are you saying that our experts are wrong? Yes, I am saying your experts are wrong. And I think I'm not even sure that Andrew even believes this. I'm sure he's playing this kind of the game that politicians play, where perhaps he wants preferment by, wants to wangle his way into the new regime. It's a bit like somebody saying in 1933 in Germany, no, wait, I know the Nazis might seem bad, but we can work with them. If only I can sort of get a position in the German government, I think I can talk them round. Andrew, the time for that kind of political maneuvering is long past. You, as an independent, proud voice that understands conservative issues, ought to be standing up for Britain and its freedoms. The idea that you, with your scientific background, have been incapable of for example, looking at the podcasts of Ivor Cummins, of listening to people like Carl Hennigan, or any number of the people who are speaking out, intelligent scientific voices, and you instead are choosing to go with the dodgy computer models of people. They're not even models, they're computer projections, which have been completely consistently falsified. Neil Ferguson is a charlatan. The people on the SAGE panel are charlatans, and I think it's disgraceful that you are asking us to pretend that you are taking this thing seriously. I'm sorry, I'm just not buying it. It's wrong. You should be resisting this stuff with your dying breath. It's a disgrace what's happening to our country.
But it's the same. So the German government, the French government, all the governments across Europe, they're all being fooled exactly the same way. All the lemmings.
So your argument is all the other lemmings are jumping over the cliff, therefore we should too. Well, the Swedish lemmings aren't jumping over the cliff, are they? Bolsonaro in Brazil isn't jumping over the cliff. There are a few countries, both liberal democracies like Sweden and crazy places like Belarus, but not everyone is doing this crazy stuff. And I'm not buying that lazy argument that you're just trying to impose on us just there.
Okay, Godfrey, you've waited patiently, so I'd invite you to come back in.
Well, I'm going to pick up on the point that James made. The majority of independent expert opinion does not agree with the political scientists, and I call them political scientists. So if you look at, for example, Dr. Pascal Sacre, for example, the Nobel Prize winner, who actually began the whole concept of testing in this manner for viruses, said he did not design this system for the way it is being used now. So he's condemned it. You've got, it's time sensitive. You've got Professor Carey, it was the Nobel Prize winner, who's denounced it. There's a mass of independent scientific opinion which says this is crazy, as it always does, and you can come on to the same thing with climate change. You've got politicized science, but the question is, it doesn't matter which scientist said what. That is not relevant. What is relevant is how many people who were previously fit and healthy have died. And it's 1,700. They're not my figures. They're the government's figures. They're the NHS figures. And if this scandemic is still such a worry to everybody, why did they close the Florence Nightingale hospitals? We shouldn't have had thousands of beds, none of which were used. Was no threat to the NHS. We've locked down again. We've got rid of the Florence Nightingale hospitals. It doesn't stack up. Andrew, what you've got to understand, what people like James and me are asking, and the people in the pub, and the ordinary people that we meet every day are saying, it just doesn't stack up. Nobody is dying. We should be stepping over lots and lots of dead bodies in the street. And we're not. No, this is a pandemic, if you want to call it that, with no deaths, which is a good thing. But the reason there are no deaths is because it's a very moderate virus. It's not as bad as the 1968 Hong Kong flu, for example. It's nowhere close to the 1918 Spanish flu. So what's going on? Andrew, who makes the rules? Who's really calling the shots? I don't believe it's Hancock.
At the end of the day, as you know,
calling the shots.
Well, at the end of the day, the Prime Minister will seek whatever scientific or political advice that he wishes, and whether it's comings this week and goings next week, that's fine. But ultimately, it's the Prime Minister and elected members of Parliament who will be held to account at the next election for the decisions that have been made, either collectively or jointly. That's the way democracy works, and that's the way it's always got to be. So, we're on the block, aren't we? And if you're right, and we've all made this terrible mistake, and we've damaged the economy without need to, I won't say deliberately, because I do not believe that sentiment for 1 minute. If you think a Conservative government would deliberately trash the economy and take away people's freedom, unless we believed it was necessary, we couldn't talk. If that's what you really, where you're coming from, that you're alleging we're doing it deliberately. I think we've got to be very careful with this virus. This is a virus. The coronaviruses tend to go into an intermediate host, mutate, and come back out. Now, we've already seen the more virus that's around in the population, the more chance of it moving into another host. We've already seen in Denmark that it moved from humans into mink. That meant 17 million mink had to be slaughtered. The more people who've got the virus, and we don't suppress it in the UK, it could move into cats, dogs, pigs, cattle. We'll end up, and if it mutates and comes back, then we won't have a vaccine that's going to be able to prevent it. And we'll end up in a situation where we've got not only coronavirus, but we'll have equivalent of the foot and mouth disease as well, where we're slaughtering animals who are carrying the coronavirus as well. And that is a nightmare scenario when we're actually now on the eve of several viable vaccines, which we'll be able to, which is the only way you ever really treat a virus disease, is vaccination, because there really aren't any historic great cures for it.
That's simply not the case.
Well, that isn't so, is it? We've got our immune system. What the government should be doing, they should be telling people to increase their vitamin D levels, vitamin C levels, magnesium.
I totally agree. Vitamin D is very important. That's why virus goes down in the summer. A lot of it's down to vitamin D, and it also explains some of the differences in susceptibility and severeness of the virus across different communities on skin color. And vitamin D.
You're going to say there's a vaccine for a virus that comes from the coronavirus, which comes from the common cold. You say there's going to be a vaccine. If there isn't a vaccine, we're going to stay in lockdown forever. Is that the government view? If there's no vaccine, we're going to lock down for the rest of our lives, Andrew? Is that what we're saying?
Well, we can't, can we? Because quite honestly, if we have to lock down for that period of time, quite honestly, life's not really worth living. I had a briefing yesterday or 2 days ago from Pfizer, and it did scare me. I mean, I must admit, I was very scared, because what they're not telling you is that new Pfizer, which it seems a very impractical vaccine at -80. I mean, I'm not sure how we're going to get that out to Africa to vaccinate people at -80. They're saying it may only be effective for 100 days or roundabout, in which case we'll be paying Pfizer for the rest of eternity, which, I mean, Pfizer will be, they seem quite happy about all of this. This is not where we want to go. I mean, this is ridiculous.
So, sorry, one of my points actually, Andrew, is why would we want to be supplying Africa with a vaccine, given that the COVID-19 virus is largely absent from most of the African countries, apart from arguably South Africa? Why would that be the case?
Well, that's not correct. I mean, I've visited Ghana, which is supposed to be one of the most democratic countries and safest countries in Africa. They had a lockdown for quite a while. But I mean, what you don't see in Africa is you don't see old people. They don't live to a great age. There's a lot of their population is young, and you don't have a lot of obesity in Africa. You may have noticed. So they are a less susceptible population.
Well, the thing is, Andrew, we've heard so much from the government since March about following the science. And James, I want to bring you in this bit. So yeah. We have been told we've got to follow the science. That's what we're doing. We've got to listen to good science. But that suggests, James, that there's such a thing as settled science. But there is no such thing as settled science, is there?
I've seen this thing for years, because I've been following the precursor to COVID-19, which is a scamdemic. And the precursor to COVID-19 was, of course, the junk science that informs the whole global warming scare industry, which, again, like COVID-19, the danger posed by man-made climate change exists only in dodgy computer models. It's weird. I mean, Neil Ferguson was operating according to the eco-fascist playbook, and people have been brainwashed into imagining that climate change is a problem. No evidence whatsoever that it represents any kind of serious threat. They couldn't quite make that one stick. I mean, they've had how many years is it? 1992 was the Rio Earth Summit. So they've had 3 decades to try and make us change our lifestyles and reboot the world economy, reset the world economy on the basis of their manufactured scare. Then, they realized that they had to up their game. So they had to pick on this handy virus that's come over from China and turn that into the reason for destroying small businesses, killing jobs, killing our economy, stealing our freedoms, muzzling us with these entirely unnecessary masks. I mean, I'd love to hear what Andrew's justification for the masks is, when we have loads of studies, including the recent one from Denmark, pointing out that masks make no measurable difference to whether or not you get coronavirus. And Andrew, it really saddens me to see Andrew playing this game, this look a squirrel game, where he says, look, and people do say that the mink of Denmark, they be developing these amazing mutations. And in Ghana, this country in Africa, we don't care. We don't care, Andrew. It's entirely irrelevant. And this is really beneath you. I'm surprised you're defending this bankrupt position. Our economy is going to hell. We've had the biggest drop in our GDP in 300 years. We've got loads of people being kept on life support on furlough. We've got people's self-esteem being destroyed by these ridiculous muzzles. We've got people snitching on their neighbors. And you're defending this as necessary when there is no evidence whatsoever that this virus is any worse than any number of seasonal flu viruses. It's just nonsense.
Yeah, but James, if you're right and I'm wrong,
I am right.
We can rebuild our economy. But if I'm right and you're wrong, we can't bring the people back who've died.
Yeah, I've heard that. That's the precautionary principle, and it's used to advance any number of scientifically dubious and massively expensive problems. What's missing from your precautionary principle is any sense of cost-benefit analysis. You are talking about COVID-19 and its death toll as if that is a discrete phenomenon, entirely independent from all the other myriad deaths which are taking place even now, from suicide, from undiagnosed or untreated cancer, the social impacts, the misery and undoubtedly increased death toll which will be caused by the economic collapse, which has been induced entirely by government policy, not by Chinese coronavirus. You are on a hiding to nothing here, mate. I'm sorry, but
James, just to get your position clear, with regard to coronavirus, would you let the virus just rip through, or would you shield those who may be vulnerable?
I think that if it's even possible to shield people in care homes, then maybe. But absolutely, what you're doing by the lockdown policy is you're actually stopping the people who need to get infected, i.e. the healthy proportion of the population, the younger people. You're stopping them from getting it, and therefore what you're doing is you're reducing the chances of, reducing the speed with which we gain herd immunity, T-cell immunity.
I see the infection rates by age group for my constituency, which is coterminous with my district council, so it is my constituency of North West Leicestershire. I see those on a weekly basis. And I would say that when we came out of lockdown, before we went in, back in again, the infection rates between 17 to 21-year-olds in my constituency were 11 times per 100,000 higher than the over 60s.
Okay.
So I think young people have disproportionately over the last few months, certainly since universities went back, and because the schools went back, you sort of 14 to 16-year-olds, 18-year-olds. I think they have carried it forward, but now we've seen it. The first week of the full lockdown, my incidence of virus actually went up, because what you've got, we'd locked down people with people who were infected, and then they infected the rest of their household. So,
okay, Andrew. So Godfrey, I know you're bursting to get in. I'm going to bring you in a second, but just before Godfrey, I've got one other question I wanted to ask James. James, if you worked in an NHS hospital, would you wear a mask?
No, but I'd have to. But I mean,
yeah,
no,
okay.
No. If I had the choice, no.
And the second question is, if you worked in a COVID ward in an NHS hospital and you had a choice, would you wear a mask or would you not? No,
I wouldn't wear a mask. I mean, apart from anything else, I've already had it. So why do I care? I've got T-cell immunity.
So have I.
That's fine. Thanks, James. Straight answer. Godfrey, I know you're trying to get in there.
Well, again, I put my sort of research actuarial hat on here. We're counting the wrong things, aren't we? Why are we counting infections for a virus which actually doesn't kill anybody? That's meaningless. You might as well count the numbers of dandruff or athlete's foot. It has absolutely no relevance to the situation at all. Would you count in a cup final? Would you count at a cup final that the side that wins the cup are the ones that had the most shots at goal, or the side that actually scored the most goals? Counting the infection rates is utterly meaningless, for it doesn't kill anybody, so it doesn't matter, does it? I can't see why every day, every week, we hear counting, oh God, there's been 11,000 people tested positive for coronavirus in Leicester or Birmingham or Liverpool. Who cares? What I want to know is how many people at the end of this week, and this is what the government should be doing, telling us at every Friday how many previously fit and healthy people have died from coronavirus. And the answer's none. None. It's the politics of the loony bin.
I know two people who've died. I knew two people who sadly died of it. They were both over 70, but they were, I don't know about their comorbidities that they may or may not have had, but I know two people personally who passed away with COVID this year.
I think
I'm not disputing with.
Yeah, you're not disputing with, but Andrew, that's part of the problem. I think one of the things that's gone wrong this year in Britain is that confidence in the statistics that we are fed through government and through the media. We've lost confidence. So, for example, we talk about infections, we talk about cases, and when people then bring up questions like, well, okay, what about the false positive percentage? We find that, Matt Hancock, for example, didn't seem to be awfully clear on what the false positive percentage is. And yet, as anybody knows, it is significant in terms of then trying to establish just how, to Godfrey's point, how serious this disease is impacting us. Why do you think that trying to get things like false positive percentages, why is that so difficult? Why should that not be just shared and then we can all make our mind up? Andrew?
Well, I think the accuracy of the testing is of a huge concern, and clearly, when you've got a low incidence of the virus in the general population, and then the level of false positives are even more significant. But I mean, that was straight after the first lockdown. My figures for infection rates were brilliant. We were below 10 cases per 100,000, and there is 100,000 people in my constituency, give or take 1,000. And we were down at that level for weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks. When the schools and the universities went back, within 4 weeks, my infection rate had increased 18-fold to 178. We're now over 300. Something's going on. Something's going on.
Yeah. But might I suggest, Andrew, what's going on is the number of people being tested has gone like that. So if you test loads of
this is cases per 100,000, and if the infected people weren't there, the more people you test, i.e., because obviously what you've got is people presenting at hospital being tested, and they're likely to have it because they've got the symptoms. But then the more people you test in the population, if the infection rate isn't there, your numbers per 100,000 will drop. The more people, unless the virus is there, and so it must be there. And it's, we're 30 times what we were at the end of August. Our infection rate.
So what? It's like saying, I imagine if you started testing for the common cold, you'd find that there were loads and loads of cases. And isn't this amazing? And isn't this fascinating? And so this shows the thing is real. We don't, in the past, we've never tested for this stuff. We've accepted that viral respiratory infections pass through the population. They all follow the same curve, the Gompertz curve. They accelerate sharply at the beginning as people, as the dry tinder, the people who are especially vulnerable, succumb to this thing, and it accelerates rapidly, and then it reaches its peak. By the way, it peaked before the lockdown, and then it falls sharply, and you might get a sort of a tail in the winter season. As you say, in the summer it dies down and you'll get a small tail. You don't get this thing called a second wave. That doesn't happen.
We had a second wave of the Spanish flu pandemic in 1918-19. The second wave killed more people than the first wave.
Yeah, well,
coming back to you and Godfrey, I'd love to ask you. So I see your position, and you can argue that point. But how do you explain the scenes we saw of the meltdown of the healthcare system when it got overloaded in Spain and parts of northern Italy earlier in the year, and again in Naples only a couple of weeks ago? How do you explain that? How do you explain that?
Well, I'm not really interested in Italy or Spain, Andrew. All I'm saying is that half the NHS, I know my wife is ex-NHS, I've got loads of friends who were surgeons, nurses, radiographers, and they closed most of the hospitals down. They were at home. A&Es were closed. They virtually closed it all down, and they had nothing to do. They were bored stiff, which is the reason we had all those antics from the young people in the NHS acting the goat on camera. The point is, it didn't affect the NHS at all. The government said we had to go on lockdown for 2 weeks to protect the NHS. We're still in lockdown today. If lockdown worked, why is it going around? If masks work, why is it going around? We just have to all get back to work as soon as we can and let voluntarily people who feel they're vulnerable, or people who decide that they're vulnerable, stay at home, and that's fine. They must do what they want to do. But I'm an oldie now. I'm 70. I'm 71, actually. I was 71 at the weekend. I don't want to cripple the economy. I don't want to cripple the social lives of young people in order that I might get a few more years. I've had a great innings, and most people feel like me. I've had a good innings. I do not want people to worry about me. I'll worry about myself. I don't need Boris to worry about me. I'm a big tough boy.
I have heard that view expressed by many altruistic of our older generation, and I do admire it greatly. But you don't have to make the decision. We have to make the decision.
No, you don't have to make the decision, Andrew, for me. Get off my back. I don't want to make decisions.
Vicarious responsibility. Will either James or Godfrey be taking the vaccine when it's available?
God, no.
God, no.
A no from James. Godfrey, will you take the vaccine?
Not a chance.
Yep. And Andrew, just for what it's worth, the day I take the COVID vaccine will be the day after hell freezes over. And you mentioned Pfizer. One of the things that is very curious about the Pfizer vaccine, and James might have a view on this, is it has to, as you said, Andrew, it has to be stored at, I think it's about -70. Yeah, which from a distribution, global logistics is very, very odd. But there's a reason why it has to be stored at such a low temperature. James, do you know what that reason is?
Well, it's an RNA. It's actually an R. It isn't actually a weakened virus. It's an RNA sequence which will make the antigen.
Yeah,
so effectively, it's like a virus itself in that it will go into your cells and you'll make the antigen, and that's why I think they're saying it'll last for about 3 months, about 98 days. I mean,
and
they think they're on a fortune for life. These people, that they're going to be taking us for a lot of money. We need something better than that. That's not a good solution at all.
James, you can't have it both ways, Andrew. You can't play poacher and gamekeeper. Either you think it's absolutely disgraceful the way that these big pharma companies are being privileged at our expense by incompetent, corrupt, World Economic Forum driven, Great Reset driven government, or you think it's a great thing. You can't have it both ways. The whole course of government policy right from the beginning, and you've seen this around the world. You've seen, for example, how the big pharma, Bill Gates, Fauci, have poured scorn on any number of cheap, available, non-damaging remedies, ranging from zinc to hydroxychloroquine to vitamin D. These are all easy ways of stopping people dying from it. And you've had the establishment, the political medical establishment, pouring scorn on these things because always we have been leading to this ridiculous situation in which we now find ourselves, where lots of gullible people, innocent people, have been persuaded by the one thing the government's good at, the one where I credit where credit's due, your propaganda department, your black ops department, it is bloody amazing. You have gulled the media, you've gulled the population into thinking that this routine-ish virus, I mean, which is certainly no worse than a bad influenza, is somehow an unprecedented threat, which can only be solved by these extremely dodgy and very expensive and very intrusive vaccines. I think that is shaming. And I think it's the duty of every right-thinking MP to oppose this nonsense, and you're not.
But actually,
I reject James's basic thesis there that it's not possible to think that the virus is real and a real threat, but also consider that I don't think big pharma is altruistic towards its intent. It is there to make a lot of money, and they see a huge opportunity. But that doesn't mean that I'd have to believe that the virus is completely fictitious and not really a threat to life at all. I mean, I don't know what your experience, James, of was having the virus, but it was by far the worst illness I've ever had in my life. I mean, by a big factor.
What was your experience of it, James?
I thought it was a cold, and I felt a bit rotten, but I carried on working. In fact, I went up to debate in Durham at the Durham Union. I'm probably the Durham super spreader. Were you there, Godfrey, that time or not? Was that a different occasion?
Different occasion, James.
Different occasion. So I went up to Durham. I probably spread it to loads and loads of students. It was fine. I mean, it wasn't like flu where when you've been hit by flu, you get sideswiped and you have to take to your bed for a few days. All I got was a couple of nights of night sweats, where I had a bit of a temperature. But no, I mean, I agree. If you get it, if you get it badly, it's not a nice experience. But I think flu is not a nice experience. So I think we need to put these things in perspective. Flu is a serious thing. Bad coronavirus is a serious thing, but that is not a reason for shutting down the entire economy.
I mean, actually, Andrew, what you just in terms of your own experience, did you find it a very bad experience then to have it?
Yes, I was never tested because I was at the end of the testing regime, which was a huge mistake not to test people in March. But I had the loss of taste and smell as a symptom early on before it couldn't have been psychosomatic because that wasn't even seen as a symptom when I got it. And I've never had I've had a day off work in my life, broken my leg playing rugby or falling off my motorcycle. being stupid. But I never had a day off with illness, not a cold, not the flu or anything. And I didn't know what day of the week it was after day 5 or 6 of coronavirus. And the fatigue, I would say, I didn't feel 100% for 6 weeks afterwards. I had a lot of sympathy with the Prime Minister's position. And it's knocked him about something terrible, I would say. It was terrible. I think.
Yeah. I think it's interesting that, Godfrey, you actually, you haven't had the COVID-19 virus.
No, I had a really terrible flu about 2 years ago. It was as bad as I've ever had in my life, and I was in bed, and so was my wife, for 3 weeks. It's a wicked and horrible experience, a bad flu. I don't know anybody, and certainly James isn't, and I'm not, saying that it's not. If you get a bad dose of it, it's not bloody awful. It is really, really awful, and I sympathize with anybody who's got it. But we're talking about hypothesizing here all the time, and we don't need to. This has now been what we were told would happen in March of this year, 6 or 7 months ago. What we were told would happen hasn't happened, because it's based, as it always is, and Neil Ferguson's to blame for this kind of thing, on what is a mathematical model, extrapolating facts, which doesn't work. And I know, because I do this for a living. I used to do this for a living in an actuarial practice. You can't do that. What you have to do is you say, nobody is dying from this. If I would go in business today, if I was still a head of CEO of a life insurance, and I would insure everybody who was fit and healthy against COVID, every under 70, if they were fit and healthy, I would insure them specifically against COVID, not with COVID, where they chuck on the death certificate at the end to make the figures look good. There are people walking around today who think we've lost 60,000 people have died from COVID-19. That's a disgraceful misuse of statistics. It's 1,700. It's absolutely outrageous that the government and the BBC perpetuate this.
The real excess mortality figures until next year, will we, when we see the comparative rates? I do feel at a bit of a disadvantage in this argument, because it's clear that the government are not going to let the virus rip. So to an extent, James and Godfrey, they can make their predictions and say that, well, we're overreacting and everything, safe in the knowledge that their system is not going to get tested, except for in Sweden, perhaps in Northern Europe, where they've got slightly different demographics, but they're showing, double and treble death rates compared to Sweden, Norway and Finland next door. So, this is a problem. What I'll share with you is that I've had some scientific feedback, and I'm not had it confirmed, from the Oxford research that suggests that this quarantine may be a waste of time, and that you may only be highly contagious for 12 hours, and it's probably prior to you having any symptoms at all. And this may explain the asymptomatic carriers that they're never going to pick up. And that would be a very clever virus if you were massively contagious before you show any symptoms. That would be quite horrible.
Andrew, I put it to you, it's a very clever virus that on the 22nd of December could potentially, give you grave illness. But on the 23rd, for 5 days, the virus, maybe it goes to the North Pole to visit Santa. I don't know. But for 5 days, apparently, the UK population...
The same argument was made about shutting, you've got to be out the pub at 10 o'clock, because if you're after 10 o'clock, the virus gets you. It knows that you're in the pub.
It's a good argument.
I accept that, but then there is a level of political will in there and political expediency that Christmas is an important time. It's an important time for the hospitality industry. Let's be brutally honest. It's for many industries, it's a massive part of their finances for Christmas. And I'm not the least surprised that the government are going to try and give someone some semblance of a reasonable Christmas, if nothing more than for political reasons, that people are going to remember 2020 for all the wrong reasons. And if they have no Christmas at all, they're going to remember it very badly. And we're accountable for that. And it is affecting people's mental health. Yeah. A lot of things that have gone on during lockdown campaigns and things have taken off, which I don't think in normal times would have gone like they were. But it is clearly, people have got a lot to worry about, more than they normally have to worry about. And if they're not worrying about themselves, they're worrying about their grandchildren, their children, their jobs, their prospects. It's a very worrying time for everyone, and there is a lot of pent up frustration and fear out there. The sooner we get the vaccine in, but these two gentlemen won't take it, so I'll have to take 3 lots to give them the immunity, and everybody I know.
But you see, Andrew,
did you take the polio vaccine when you were children? You know.
Well,
oh yes. Let me just say, I'm not anti-vax. I'm not anti-vax, Andrew.
Right.
But polio was a lethal disease. A lethal disease. Awful disease. Believe me, I'm a baby boomer. I've seen firsthand the damage that polio can do. What I don't want is a vaccine against a virus which has a 99.9 recovery rate. I can't see the point of it.
I know, but those who say that the anti-vaxxers, the huge amount of money being given to eradicate polio around the world by the person they allege is the archdemon of the vaccine, and we won't take the vaccine because he's behind it. And he's given most of his personal fortune to eradicating polio around the world in Africa. But I can't live with the huge conspiracy theories. Quite honestly,
all I'm saying, Andrew, is, do you deny that in the fit and healthy, and they're your own government's figures, that the recovery rate is over 99.5%? And explain to me and James why we would want a vaccine which has got to be virtually untried at such short notice for something which we know, being fit and healthy, we will recover from in a few days and at worst a few weeks. Why would we do that?
Because a real vaccine is the only real protection for virus.
It's not.
It's nonsense.
We have T-cell immunity. What are you talking about? You're denying centuries of medical science here. It seems to have been turned on its head in 2020. Up until 2019, even the World Health Organization was pretty much where we are on how you treat viral respiratory infections. You don't have lockdowns. You don't have quarantines. It's possible at the very, very, very early stages that maybe these measures might work. But generally what we do is we let these things go through the population. That phrase, let it rip, is a loaded phrase. But essentially what happens is that we get exposed to these things. Our immune system deals with them. They then become endemic. We are treating this one like it's different, and it's not different.
But what's
and
the
that's the
difference
problem.
between getting herd immunity through a vaccine or getting exposed to the real virus? And with the vaccine, you're not going to be ill and not going to be any risk to anybody.
I'm amazed you can even answer that question.
What's the difference? What's the difference? We're getting herd. Vaccine gives us herd immunity. That's what we all want.
Yeah, but you're sort of making out that the body's natural processes of dealing with viruses is no better than an untried, rushed vaccine, which you may need to take again after a few months. I don't know how you can even make that argument in any conscience.
I'm not a big fan of the Pfizer vaccine because you're going to have to take 2 doses of it, and it might only last 100 days. I think the Oxford vaccine will be a better option than that.
But in fact, the reality is, James, turn to you first, then Godfrey. You won't. I believe your position is you won't take any, be it the Pfizer, the Moderna, be it the Astrazeneca, Oxford University one. You wouldn't take any of those at this point in the game. Is that correct?
Absolutely not, until I've seen what effect it has on those poor guinea pigs who have to take it. And also, I know that there have been several examples of people who've already been exposed to coronavirus, so have the T-cell immunity, who are then given a vaccine, and actually it has severely negative effects on their health. That hasn't even been thought about or discussed. it seems like the government is planning to put me genuinely at risk. Those of us who've had it, we're going to be put at risk by being impelled to take this unnecessary vaccine. That is unprecedented. That is really dodgy.
I wouldn't support any measures that made it mandatory. I mean, I also, I will be taking the vaccine and encouraging people to take the vaccine.
Yeah.
But what happens then when they say to James, well, I mean, once we get to 60, we only need 60 or 70% of the people to take it. We'll have to see. But I mean, you wouldn't be happy then if they said, well, James, you haven't taken the vaccine. Now you can't fly on airplanes for 2 years or something. I mean,
there you are. You are tacitly enduring.
Is this the threat? Is this the threat? Yeah. You won't be able to travel. You won't go to the cinema.
I can see that could be used as, shall we say, I'm flagging up. I could see that being used as an inducement.
Of course it will. It will be mandatory in all but name, and it's disgusting.
I love your use of the word inducement there, as though it's a kind of, it's like a sort of sugared pill. It's actually a stick. It's a bloody great stick. What you're saying is you won't be able to travel anymore unless you take our dodgy vaccine. You are tacitly.
James, I can't wait to get rid of you. I mean, this is. I've been waiting for this opportunity for decades, obviously.
Make light of it.
Hang on a second, but I mean, I know you speak in jest, Andrew, but the truth of the matter is, as far as I can see, that we're going to be put in such a position, and Godfrey and James have both alluded to it, that whilst the vaccine won't be mandatory, it doesn't need to be mandatory. But if you want to get on a Qantas flight, if you want to go to see a sporting event,
there'll be decisions that those businesses make, won't they? There won't be government decisions.
Yeah, well,
right. Yeah, it's not the government's fault. Suddenly, you've got big corporations acting in cahoots with big state. It's all the same. It's like it's becoming like Blade Runner, and I just think that it behoves all of us. It behoves all of us to resist in whatever way we can. Free individuals and ordinary civilians and politicians alike. And you are not doing your bit, Andrew.
I think the vaccine is the fastest way we're going to get back to all those freedoms and there are people out there think they're never going to get these freedoms back. Do you think when we've got the vaccine and the virus is burnt out that you're going to get your freedom? Because there are people out there who don't think that you're ever going to get your freedoms back.
Well, actually, Dr. Fauci himself, no less, that well-known authority, has stated that in his view, Andrew, even with a vaccine, it may be necessary to continue to wear masks and continue to have social distancing. So, are you saying that your view is that if we all got vaccines, all those current restrictions would vanish? Do you think they would go away?
They've got to go. They've all got to go, yes. They've all got to go.
Oh, yeah.
Dr. Fauci begs to differ, and I think he has been quite influential in the debate so far. Godfrey, I mean, from your perspective, we want to wrap this one up, but it's a big topic. It's really been hard to get into, to cover all aspects of it. But I think I referenced at the beginning, you did a really good video today called "The Great Pub Reset," and in that video, I think one of the things that you held up a British passport, Godfrey, and you said that was your freedom passport. That's what you need to be a free person. You don't need anything else. You don't need any bureaucrat to come along and give you additional things. And I suspect a lot of Brits probably think like you, and people like Andrew, who was so prominent in to get us our freedom from the EU. It's sad to see us having to take different sides, actually, because I suspect on other platforms we are very united. But this, Godfrey, is such a divisive topic, isn't it?
Well, if you let fear take away your freedom, I think it was Thomas Jefferson who said, if you are for temporary safety, you want to give up your liberty, you'll end up with neither. You'll end up with neither. And Thomas Jefferson was absolutely right. I want my freedom. I'm a free-born Englishman. My father was a fighter pilot in the war. My grandfather fought in the First War. We fought for freedom. What I don't want is a Conservative government or a Labour government under Boris or anybody else telling me where I can go, nanny Boris. If I decide to take the risk to go to a pub and the pub is open and other people take the risk, I'm all right with that. If you're frightened to go to the pub, don't go to the pub, all right? Stay at home, hide under the stairs. If you want to wear a mask, wear a mask. If you think it's going to help you, it's ludicrous, but people do think it's going to help them, wear a mask. Don't make me do it. And if anybody comes up to me, a COVID marshal, whoever they may be, and learn this well, Andrew, I'm not alone. I'll give them one of these right in the boat race.
But,
Right.
Yeah.
well, the thing is that, you know, ultimately, we all four of us believe in the fundamental right to be free people, to think for ourselves. And I guess, Andrew, I think that the bit that does really bother me in this is the politicians do have responsibility, and when you're in government, you've got lots of responsibility. And I think in our different ways we see that. But the government propaganda, which James referenced, it's been monumental. I mean, honestly, from when you wake up in the morning till you go to bed at night, you're hit with ads, and that's why actually, Godfrey, whilst you're quoting figures of 1,700 people having died of COVID, 99% of the British public they probably think it's 600,000 actually, because they
and you've got that, and David, you've got this coupled with a massive loss of belief in the mainstream media, which is quite reasonable. And you've got almost the perfect storm. But I mean, I think that where we really differ is that I think James and Godfrey honestly believe that this is the wedge of a totalitarian state coming in. It's in forever.
Yes.
Well, that's not.
And you're not doing a bit to resist it.
That's what it is that I'm getting out. I'll be out of politics very quickly, and so will most of my colleagues. I can assure you.
No, you're part of the problem. You are actually part of the government which is imposing this totalitarianism on us. You are part of the government which is enabling a culture where 72-year-old women are dragged from the streets outside Westminster into police vans.
Not in my name.
Yeah, but I mean, that it is a fair enough point, though. That it's very difficult in so many ways. This one, I think the thing is, you know, Godfrey, that Andrew is kind of, you know, suggesting that if you don't take the vaccine, you're kind of you're an anti-vaxxer. But you've mentioned polio. You've said things you understand, and I said this in another stream the other night, that lots of us understand how important vaccines can be, and the fundamental good. There's a tremendous amount of good in this world. If you want to go to certain countries, you're probably very prudent to take a vaccine. But choice has to be a matter as well. And if you ain't got the issue, you should have the choice. And we shouldn't be demonized, Andrew, James, and
vaccination's got to be a personal choice, and parents will have to make that choice for their own children. And again, it's a bit like persuading the government, persuading the public of the merits of whatever lockdown measures or procedures they want to see to suppress the virus. They've got to carry the people with them, and that's got to be an open and clear debate. But what I do completely disagree with Godfrey and James on is I will not, and most of my colleagues will not stand for this is the new status quo and people have lost all these liberties forever. And I see the measures the government's taking now is the fastest way to get us back to a position where we enjoy those freedoms. And I want to enjoy them, and I want my children to enjoy them. If we're not, this is not a country, that's not a regime I'd want to ever live under. And
I think, Andrew, one of the things as well that sort of that is the concern is we do live in a democracy, and governments have to be held to account. But you know, Godfrey, if we look at Parliament, I
mean, COVID did for Trump. If COVID hadn't come along, Donald Trump would have walked that election, and many politicians will be well aware of what's happened. He would have walked that election. They've never had it so good for
why is that?
Years.
Yeah, good question.
We've opened a can of worms here.
We do. We can have another discussion on Trump. We can have another discussion. But no, my point was that the only thing that the official opposition has done, James and Godfrey, is they've demanded even greater restrictions.
Well, that's that. Can I briefly make my final point before I go and deal with this stressed dog who wants to? Is very simply, Andrew said that we'd be able to vote out the Conservative MPs responsible for this absolute nonsense. But actually, we've got Hobson's choice. We've got Keir Starmer, who is a member of the Trilateral Commission, the very sinister and powerful group which is pushing for this great reset. The Labour opposition are in lockstep. Oh, well, even more so. They're amplifying the government's lunacy. So we have no actual democratic choice on this issue, and I find that very worrisome. Anyway, thank you. I'm going to go and deal with the dog now.
You go and sort out your canine.
Okay,
Pleasure to be in the stream. Thank you very much, Andrew. Thank you for coming on. Really appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Also,
Bye-bye.
Thank you very much. Thanks everyone for watching. We'll be back soon. Cheers for now. Bye-bye.
Bye.